on, everybody? Welcome to the reincarnation of WMCT's Talking Sports. I'm your sports director, Matt Bisaccio, and we're joined now by the newest member of the WMCT sports team, Connor Clement. What's going on, Connor?
Hey, Matt, what's going on, man? Good to be here with you.
Everything's going well. We're going to be talking to you guys about the most relevant sports topics each week, hopefully throughout the course of the summer until we get back into the high school sports coverage in the fall. Let's get right into it. Last night was the NBA draft. Connor, what are your impressions of the night overall?
Well, I think for the most part, Matt, everything went according to plan. The first couple picks in the draft, everybody knew were going to be Zion Williamson going to the New Orleans Pelicans, Ja Morant going to Memphis, RJ Barrett going to the Knicks. Everything after that was kind of a chess game, really. The Celtics picked at 14. They picked up Romeo Langford, freshman guard out of the University of Indiana. A lot of people liked the pick. Before the draft, a lot of people had their eyes on Tyler Hero, who's a guard out of Kentucky. That ended up being the pick before the Celtics pick, so Danny Ainge had to twiddle his thumbs there with 5 minutes before they had to pick, and he picked up Romeo Langford out of Indiana.
Who do you think is going to end up being the best player out of this draft?
Well, I mean, it's easy to say Zion Williamson. I don't think a prospect has had as much hype as him since LeBron James came out of high school back in '04. So he's the easy, no-brainer pick to say he's going to be the best player in the draft. I still have some question marks about whether or not he's going to be an elite scorer at the NBA level. He still has a awkward-looking jump shot, so he's going to have to develop his jump shot. He has no problem working his way to the rim with his willpower and physicality. But if you were going to ask me, in my opinion, in 5 years, who's going to have the most success, I would have to go with RJ Barrett, who went to the Knicks at 3. I think he's the most complete player offensively. He's the most talented player in the draft. He can shoot and score from anywhere on the floor. His defense will come along, too, as he gets better in his years with the Knicks. So I would say RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think RJ Barrett's probably the most NBA-ready player right now from his skill set, being able to shoot, being able to drive, the size and the physicality that he has. I just think there's going to be a lot on Zion's plate, and especially right away. I mean, the package that New Orleans got from LA, bringing guys like Ball and Ingram onto the team, they're going to be an exciting team to watch, but it's going to be difficult once you get into the course of a regular season with the lack of experience that team has. So I wouldn't look for Zion to really do well at least the first couple of years. I think it's going to take him some time. A guy like RJ Barrett, I mean, the whole floor is hit. I mean, they have nobody else really on that team in New York besides Dennis Smith Jr. So I look for him to put up a lot of numbers right away. But, I mean, Ja Morant, I think he may have the highest ceiling out of all of them with his particular skill set, being a guy that can score but also pass, as we saw in the NCAA tournament.
All right, so going back to the Celtics' first pick, Romeo Langford, they picked once again in the first round, taking Grant Williams out of Tennessee, and then they had 2 picks in the second round. They took 2 guards, Carson Edwards out of Purdue and Tremont Waters out of LSU. So do you like what the Celtics did last night, Matt?
I do. I like the Edwards pick in the early part of the second round much more than I like the Romeo Langford pick in the first round. Not that I know a lot about Romeo Langford. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know everything about him. But just on the surface, when you look at different numbers like the 27.5, or him shooting only 27.5% from 3, in a league that we're in now today, you need to be 3-and-D. So it certainly seems like he's going to be able to provide on the defensive end. I just don't know if his game is going to translate. I mean, he's going to have to be really good at driving to the basket, really good at being able to get to the free throw line to be effective offensively. The Grant Williams pick at 24, I believe it was, I'm not a huge fan of power forwards that are a little bit undersized. I start to think about, I mean, he's got a better body than Jared Sullinger, but is it going to be like a Jared Sullinger 2.0, or is he going to have more of a fluid offensive game like somebody like Marcus Morris? But them getting Edwards at the 34 overall pick, I like that a lot because they're picking for need at that point. You don't know about Kyrie Irving going into next season. Well, you do. He's not going to be there. You're not sure whether or not you're going to be able to retain Terry Rozier. And I don't know if anybody else feels comfortable with Marcus Smart running your point position. So I like that pick. I mean, he had a great run in the NCAA tournament, so I guess we'll have to see.
Right, Matt. Well, going back to you prefaced Kyrie Irving isn't going to be in Boston next season. That's kind of a given. Nobody foresees that he's coming back. Al Horford looks like he's going to be moving on from the Celtics. He's looking for a 4-year max, well, maybe not max deal, but he's looking for a big deal elsewhere. What do you kind of see in the fold for the Celtics moving forward? I mean, the roster that they have now, built around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're going to need more pieces to compete in the Eastern Conference next year. What do you see some potential free agent moves that Danny Ainge could make?
Well, I'm hoping that they're going to be able to bring at least somebody in there. You have a guy like Kyrie that's going to be moving on to Brooklyn. So if Kyrie's going to be in Brooklyn, it doesn't really make sense for him and D'Angelo Russell to both play together. So that's somebody potentially that could come in. But moving on from Kyrie and Al Horford, I think a lot of Celtics fans are okay with it. You understand now that next season and maybe the year after that, your ceiling isn't championship, but you know that it's going to be a team that's going to be easier to cheer for. Kyrie, over the last year and a half, 2 years, you understand the talent, you appreciate it. When he's in the throes of a 30, 40-point game, you love it. But you understand that there's baggage that comes along with that as well. And a guy like Al Horford, I mean, the guy was making upwards of $30 million the last couple of years. So for him to opt out of that deal, I feel like he's done the Celtics a great service. They're going to be able to take some of that money, and they're going to be able to spread it throughout the course of the roster, get some more depth, and I think they're going to be able to do well in the next few years. I mean, like I said, maybe not championship level, but they're going to be a team that's fun to cheer for, and I think that a lot of Celtics fans are going to be able to get back in love with the team where maybe they fell out of love the last couple of years. But do you think that there's anything else, maybe from a roster standpoint, that Danny Ainge maybe could have done over the last couple of years, or is his hands just tied based on circumstance?
I mean, I think Danny Ainge has done just about all he could have done over the past couple of years. Making that trade a few years back with the Nets really positioned the Celtics for a long time, put them in a good place with draft picks and a lot of capital to make moves. But it seems like with Kyrie Irving leaving after such a short marriage together, it's kind of backfired in his face a little bit. Now you have Al Horford leaving, who you signed to that original 4-year deal. You thought he was going to kind of be the glue that held this team together. It's kind of an awkward ending, but I don't think you can look at what Danny Ainge has done and say to yourself, he hasn't done enough. I think he's tried to make the moves. We know that Danny Ainge is a very aggressive GM. We saw what he did back in 2007, getting Ray Allen and KG. That team went on to win their first NBA championship in years. So I think he's done enough. But I just think some of the things he's done have kind of backfired in his face. So moving forward, I think the future certainly looks bright. They still have two of the best young players in the NBA, in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So they just have to make the most of their cap space moving forward in free agency this summer, and hopefully some of these draft picks pan out like Romeo Langford.
So you don't think that maybe over the last couple of years he should have sold the farm for some of these bigger key free agents like an Anthony Davis or a Kawhi Leonard?
Well, I think going after Anthony Davis is a no-brainer. Every team wants to land a guy that good and that talented and special. But I think at the end of the day, the Pelicans were asking for way too much. They wanted Jason Tatum. He was kind of the centerpiece of the deal that the Pelicans wanted to bring in. And Danny Ainge said no at the end of the day. He wanted to keep such a young and talented player as Jason Tatum and try and foster a team around him for years to come in Boston. And I don't think I can blame him for that. Seeing what the Lakers gave up to get Anthony Davis, I think Jason Tatum, along with Jaylen Brown and a couple draft picks, would have been way too much. So I'm glad they didn't pull the trigger on Anthony Davis. And like I said, hopefully they can make a splash with a big free agent name such as Kemba Walker. As you mentioned, if Kyrie goes to Brooklyn, maybe D'Angelo Russell will come to Boston. But it's certainly going to be an exciting free agency offseason in the next couple of weeks.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Bruins.
Well, the Boston Bruins lost the Stanley Cup in 7 games. Game 7 at the TD Garden, they were taken down by the St. Louis Blues by a score of 4-1. Matt, was this a choke?
Oh, absolutely. There's no other way that you can slice this. The Boston Bruins had the easiest possible road to the Stanley Cup. They had to face Toronto in the first round, but that ended up being their most difficult challenge along the way, obviously, until they got to the Stanley Cup final where they lost. But they didn't have to face the Capitals. They didn't have to face the Lightning. They didn't have to face the Penguins. Calgary wasn't sitting there waiting for them in the Stanley Cup final. Everything was right there for them. They take care of business the first 3 rounds, and then heading into the Stanley Cup final, I bet you couldn't find one person, one national pundit that would have said, I pick the Blues. I think the Blues are the more talented team. I foresee them winning in 5, 6, 7 games, whatever the case may be. I absolutely think that this was a choke. I honestly think that this is one of the biggest chokes in Boston sports history. The only two that would be any bigger than this one would be the 18-0 Patriots that lost in the Super Bowl, or the 17-1 Patriots that lost in the Super Bowl. I can't remember which one it was. But That team, and then 1986 when the Red Sox were up 3-2, they had, one more out to get in the World Series. So this one, after those two, in my opinion, would be the biggest choke or collapse in Boston sports history.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with you there, Matt. I mean, the Bruins from the start of the playoffs really had the doors open up for them. From the first round of the Eastern Conference, playing the Maple Leafs, that was probably their toughest opponent throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs. A lot of people think they went on to face the Carolina Hurricanes, or excuse me, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who were a gritty team but didn't lack the talent that a team like the Lightning possess, who the Bruins probably should have played in the second round. Then they go on to face the Carolina Hurricanes, who a lot of people were scratching their heads saying, how is this team even in the playoffs, let alone playing in the Eastern Conference Finals? So the Bruins really had a cakewalk to the Stanley Cup Finals. Not to mention they had home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup Finals and go on to lose in 7 games. So I have to agree with you. It's a huge choke. It's a disappointment. Now, if you were an upset fan, which sounds like you are, who do you point the blame at here?
Well, first off, you have to look at that top line between Bergeron and Marchand. It's just when you have multiple 100-point scorers, or at least in Marchand's case, he's a 100-point scorer throughout the course of this season, you can't disappear. You can't disappear in one Stanley Cup final, let alone back-to-back. And if I was going to give the most blame to anybody, I guess I would give it to Brad Marchand, because in the last 2 Stanley Cup finals, he's played in 13 games. Any guess at how many points he has in those 2 series?
Not many. I know that the first line was definitely a disappointment, really throughout the whole playoffs. I know David Pastrnak had some goals, but really just in the right moment, right place at the right time type of thing. But you're definitely right, Matt. The first line did not show up in the playoffs, and certainly not in the Stanley Cup final.
No, but Brad Marchand, in those 13 games, the 6 games in the Chicago series back in 2013, I believe it was, and then the series that just passed, he had 3 total points. For somebody that's supposed to be your sniper, for somebody that's supposed to be, the most skilled player on your team, and if you had come up with like a draft before the season had started, or before the series had started rather, how many of Bruins would you have picked before you picked somebody from St. Louis? I mean, you would have had to have gotten to 5, 6, 7 deep before you even would have considered one of the other guys from the Blues. I mean, the Blues basically just punched the Bruins in the mouth, and the Bruins didn't have a counter. They were worn down over the course of that 7-game series. And by the time it got to that 7th game, the Bruins had nothing left in the tank.
No, you're absolutely right, Matt. I think the physicality of the Blues really wore down the Bruins over the course of a 7-game series, and that's really the Blues' best asset. They're bruisers. They don't have as much talent as a team like Boston does, and they try and get you with the physical part of the game, and it worked out for them. Especially in Game 7, they went up 2-0 in the first period after the Bruins totally dominated the first period. Tuukka Rask gave up 2 goals on 4 shots. The first goal probably wasn't exactly his fault, but that can really take the wind out of the sail of a team that's dominating in the first period and has nothing to show for it.
But didn't you feel like at that point, once they scored that second goal, which again was a direct result of Brad Marchand just sitting there and having to skate over to the bench with 14 seconds to go in the period, like what was he saving himself for, Game 8?
Yeah, that was a weird play. I mean, it looked like Brad was skating to the bench. I don't know if he necessarily gave up on the play, but I think it was more of a situational unawareness type of play from Brad. And I think they scored the goal with 7 seconds left. So talk about playing to the whistle. The Blues went up 2-0, and they never looked back. They got into their style of hockey, moving into the second period, the defensive style. They blocked a lot of shots. And then Jordan Binnington, the rookie goalie, who was a former Providence Bruin, he stood on his head the whole night, so you got to give credit to the Blues, but certainly a disappointment for Boston Bruins fans alike. Moving forward, where do you see this team going? Is there a reset button moving forward next year? Is the window closed for this group moving forward?
I don't know if I'm going to say that the window's closed. They still have most of their key players like Marchand and Bergeron. Those guys are locked up for the foreseeable future. Now, it might be close for a guy like Zdeno Chara, who looked as slow as molasses the whole series. I would imagine that if he has one more year left in him, that would pretty much be it. But then the era of the McAvoys and the Krugs are really going to take over going forward. I would say that it's not closed, but hockey's a funny sport in the way that, anything can happen. Like you can have a great team, but they fall flat on their face. I mean, go ask Go ask what was the first place team this year. I can't even remember their name right now. They got knocked out in the first round. They got swept. But that it just goes to show that hockey is kind of finicky like that. And you can have a great team, but still never make it. So I think what I'm really trying to say is that this was just a blown opportunity for this group, and they may never get back here again and have such a good chance.
All right, that's all the Bruins talk we got for you guys today. We're going to cover the Red Sox and Yankees and talk about David Ortiz's shooting in his home country of the Dominican Republic when we come back.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports. We're going to transition from the ice rink to the diamond. We're going to talk about the Red Sox. The Red Sox World Series champions in 2018, everything went right for them at every turn, but this year, that has not been the case. After a really rocky start to begin the season, they've started to play a little bit better of late. I think they've won 6 or 7 of their last 7 or 8. They're getting themselves back, but they still look up at the Yankees and the Rays in the division. Connor, what's been the most disappointing aspect to the team's play this year?
Well, as you mentioned, they are on a little bit of a hot streak right now. This happened a few weeks ago, and then they went back into a little bit of a slump. I think the biggest concern for the Red Sox right now is ultimately the pitching, especially the bullpen. After losing a guy like Craig Kimbrell and Joe Kelly, Nathan Eovaldi's on the DL still, even though he's technically a starting pitcher. They could probably use an arm like his in the bullpen. I think the bullpen's been really subpar this year. They've blown a lot of saves. They've blown a lot of leads late in games, and it makes it hard for this team to get back into it late in the innings. So I think for the most part, the biggest problem with the Sox has been the pitching. As of late, they're scoring a lot of runs. The bats are starting to come alive. You got guys like Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, and JD Martinez kind of leading the charge offensively. But they really got to look to pick up a couple arms here before the trade deadline. I think specifically bullpen arms if they want to continue to kind of close the gap in the AL East.
I know certainly they can't waste any more quality starts from Chris Sale. He had a rough go of it to begin the season. First 5-6 starts, he pitched pretty poorly, but he's turned it on of late in the last 7 or 8 starts. I mean, are they going to be able to waste any more of these starts?
I don't think so. I don't think they can afford to keep overthrowing Chris Sale. I mean, as you mentioned, he started rocky this year, got off to a 1-7 start. He's won a couple in a row now, but the Sox have blown I think 2 or 3 of his last 4 or 5 starts. Or he hasn't gotten a decision in those starts. So he's been much better as of late. He's kind of gotten back to his ace status, if you will. So they're going to need him moving forward. I mean, he's still a top 5 pitcher in the AL, and he's been great as of late, as I mentioned. So I don't think they can continue to blow these leads for the guy and try and keep his morale and momentum up at the same time.
I mean, does this kind of fall back on Dombrowski then, as far as the season as you look at it? I mean, the back of the bullpen, we were told it was going to be fine. They were going to throw guys like Brazier and Workman and guys like that out there to kind of be a stopgap at that closer position, but they didn't feel like it was necessary to bring Kimbrell back at the number that he wanted. Is that a mistake now? Should they have gotten Kimbrell, or was this the right decision to not overpay for somebody like that?
I understand the reasoning of not wanting to overpay a guy like Craig Kimbrell, who's definitely on the back 9 of his career, but he still has a lot of great baseball left in him. Then again, I probably would have signed him, tried to come to a closer number that was more fitting to the Red Sox and work for Kimbrell as well. I think that throughout the first part of the season, you've really seen, as I mentioned before, the blown saves and the struggles in the bullpen. Perhaps he would have helped secure some of those victories. So I think not having a guy like Craig Kimbrell, who you had all last season, who helped you win the World Series, has been a huge blow for this Red Sox team. And hopefully, like I said, they can pick up at least 1 or 2 arms that can help procure the bullpen moving forward in the season.
Boston sits, 7 games back right now in the division behind the Yankees. Now, if this is the same case maybe 5-6 weeks from now and they're out 10 games, are they going to start to think about moving major pieces in this lineup like a Betts possibly to not have to worry about paying him that 10-year, $400 million contract that he might want? Or is it going to be somebody else, maybe like a Benintendi, who they know that they can get a lot for because of the remaining years they have in arbitration?
I think Dave Dombrowski's shown one thing in his career, and he's not, and that one thing is he's not afraid to make big deals, big moves for a win now type of mentality. And I think that anybody's on the table to be moved at the trade deadline. I don't think Mookie Betts will be moved. I think Mookie Betts is kind of the guy they want to see this team built around for the rest of his career. If I was Dave Dombrowski, I would personally cut a check out of the checkbook. I would hand it to him. I would sign it, and I'd say, write a number down, Mookie. I don't want to know what it is, but go back to work. I think that's the type of player that he is. I think that's what the Red Sox have to do to keep him here long term. I know he's going to probably look for one of, if not the biggest contract of all time in baseball's history. But I don't see him being moved before the deadline. I personally wouldn't make the move. A guy like Andrew Benintendi, there's a possibility there. I think over the past couple of years, Red Sox fans have thought more highly of him than he's performed. I think he's kind of underperformed, if you will. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was for the right pieces that could help this team win now and wouldn't hinder the batting lineup or the outfield too much. A guy like Andrew Benintendi could be looked at to be moved.
I have one more thing before we switch subjects or switch to the Yankees. How much blame do you put at the feet or lay at the feet of Alex Cora for messing with the lineup from last year and trying to force somebody like Mookie Betts or like Benintendi, in that leadoff role?
Yeah, it's been kind of spotty. I mean, to start the year, Alex Cora before the season mentioned that Dustin Pedroia was going to bat leadoff opening day, and then I believe he said Andrew Benintendi was going to bat leadoff for the season. He's retracted that. He said that Mookie Betts was going to start to bat leadoff. So it's been kind of wishy-washy for Alex Cora. For me, the biggest thing is after they won the World Series, it seemed like the Red Sox organization as a whole, including manager Alex Cora, kind of had this idea that we don't really have to go out and make ourselves any better. I like the team that we have now. We just won the World Series. And I think they kind of laid back in the offseason and didn't make some moves that needed to be made to procure a good bullpen and kind of bolster their batting lineup. And now they're looking up at a team like the New York Yankees who have been really good all year, and they haven't really had their team at full strength. So it's been a scary situation for the Red Sox because now the Yankees are starting to get healthy, as you know, Matt.
Yes, they are. And they had that addition in Edwin Encarnacion last week. They have just started a series with the Houston Astros last night where they won 10-6, and things are looking pretty good for the Bombers.
Yeah, you mentioned they won last night 10-6. They continue to win these big games against these good teams. I mean, Houston, one of the best teams in the AL over the past couple of years. Moving forward for the Yankees, they're continuing to get healthy. I think you said Aaron Judge is coming back tonight. He's one of the best players in all of Major League Baseball. He's probably, if not the second best player on the team, he's probably the best player on the Yankees. Moving forward, what do you expect from the Yankees?
At this point, they have to play in the American League Championship, and it has to be a competitive series. Otherwise, the season's a failure. The last few years, they've built up to a certain point. The year before last, they played the Astros in the American League Championship game. Last year, the Red Sox go on that incredible run. They don't even make it to the ALCS. But this year, you have Gary Sanchez, who's played out of his mind, who's been able to carry the club through all of these injuries. But now you're getting guys like Stanton back. You're getting guys like Judge back. You're getting guys like D. Gregorius back, or D. Gregorius, sorry. He's getting him back as well. So I think that everything's coming together for this team, and they should be the odds-on favorite to make the World Series. Now, I know that the Astros are going to have something to say about that, being in the ALCS the last 3 years or so. But with the power hitting that this club has right now, you can't think anything else besides World Series or bust.
Well, everything seems to be clicking for the Yankees. The starting rotation, the bullpen's been solid. Obviously, the lineup and the power that you mentioned. Do you see this team going out and trying to make any trades before the trade deadline?
Yeah, I do. I would imagine that they're going to try to do something to bring another top-tier starting pitcher in. They've gotten great starts out of guys like Paxton and Tanaka as of late. Tanaka just pitched a complete game shutout against the Rays a couple of days ago. But I don't know if Tanaka can be the best pitcher on a World Series winning team. I know that he can certainly be one of the top two, maybe top three, but I think that they're going to need to bring somebody in. You're not sure about whether or not Luis Severino is going to be able to come back this year. You keep hoping as a Yankees fan that he will, but I'm imagining that one of these weeks they're just going to say that they shut him down and he's going to have season-ending surgery. So if I were the Yankees, you have great talent at the farm level. In particular, Clint Frazier, who they just sent down the other day to make room for Encarnacion. I would take somebody like him. I would ship him over to San Francisco if they'll do the deal and get a guy like Madison Bumgarner in here for the second half of the season. Then, at that point, you'll have Severino, Bumgarner, and Tanaka, and Paxton. And then once you have those guys in there, I think that is the recipe for success going forward.
Well, sticking to baseball, one of the biggest stories in Boston sports over the past couple of weeks has been that of superstar slugger and former Red Sox David Ortiz. He was shot in the Dominican Republic, his home country, while at a restaurant. He was shot in the back once. The Red Sox sent a team plane to go have him picked up to be brought back to Boston to receive medical attention here. A lot of conflicting reports coming out of the DR, Matt, in terms of what the shooting involved and why it occurred. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on with those reports.
What a strange case this is. You have David Ortiz, who is beloved by everybody in baseball, certainly everybody in the region of New England and Boston, and you would imagine that back home he's revered, almost as like a demigod. Now we find out on June 9th that he's shot in the back. And for the first couple of days, you're getting all these different conflicting reports of it was a robbery and this and that, and then over the course of a couple of weeks, they must have arrested 13 to 15 different suspects. And all that just to hear a couple of days ago that the Dominican authorities are saying, oh, it was just a case of a mistaken identity. I don't buy that for a second. I really don't. Somebody as recognizable as David Ortiz in the country or in the Dominican Republic, I just don't buy that. And they're saying that the other guy that he was supposed to have, the other guy that was supposed to have been shot was this R&B singer. And then you see that the pictures of the two guys, and they couldn't look anything alike. They couldn't look any more different. So I don't buy it at all.
I'd have to agree with your opinion there, Matt. I mean, in terms of your view and opinion of David Ortiz, obviously we've heard the reports of there being a mistress involved, and that's why he was targeted or not targeted. Does this change your opinion or view of David moving forward?
You can't help but think about him differently at this point. The only other blemish on this guy's record up until this point was that his name may or may not have come up on that Mitchell report back in, what was it, 2009? I mean, aside from that, this guy has had pretty much a pristine reputation. So for me, in my mind, yes. But I'm a Yankees fan, so I'm a little bit easier to persuade in that way. What say you?
I would have to say it does change your perception of him a little bit. I mean, as you mentioned, David Ortiz is revered. He's loved. He's certainly one of the most iconic, recognizable athletes in the whole country, let alone in New England and Boston alone. He's one of the biggest heroes in Boston sports and the history of Boston sports. He's done more great things for the city than most athletes ever have or ever will, besides maybe a Tom Brady. So I think overall the perception might change a little bit, but it was great to see the outpouring of support and love that he received from the New England and Boston area. And the Red Sox sending that team plane out there to bring him back to Boston, receive the correct and right medical attention he could receive here in Boston was great as well.
Yeah, we certainly hope that he makes a full recovery and that he makes an appearance at Fenway sometime very soon. Last subject before we leave for the day, we're going to talk a little bit of golf. Just this past week, we had the U.S. Open. Gary Woodland wins his first career major. He sank a 30-foot putt to win it. It was really a wonderful moment. He didn't even have to hit that putt, but he drilled it. But the opposite end of that is you have a guy like Brooks Koepka. He had a chance at winning his third straight U.S. Open, but missed a big putt down the stretch that ultimately led to Woodland being able to win it. My question is, Connor, what's going to be the more recognizable moment when we look back at this a few years from now? Is it going to be the made putt by Woodland to win it, or is it going to be the fact that Brooks Koepka choked it away?
I think you have to give all the credit in the world to Gary Woodland. I mean, to make that putt in such a high-pressure moment, as you mentioned, he didn't have to make the putt. He had 3 putts from 30 feet to procure the victory at the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. But he said, you know what, I'll just put it away now. The former Division II college basketball player, he made some big shots back in the day in his college basketball career. Figured he would emulate that on the golf course. So got to give the credit to Gary Woodland. It was great to see him win his first major. He's been close in a lot of tournaments, maybe not so much the majors, but this is kind of the monkey off his back. Now he can move forward knowing that he has a major. He knows the nerves and the jitters you get late in the round when you're leading at a major. So Gary Woodland, good for him. I like to see a different name on top. As far as Brooks Koepka goes, 3 in a row would have been absolutely crazy. 2 in a row was crazy enough. But the guy just seems like a winning machine. He shows up for all these majors. He plays to his best at all these majors, and he's right near the top of the leaderboard every time. So I don't necessarily think Brooks choked it away. I think Brooks, he started in the middle of the pack the first couple days and then moved up the leaderboard. He was right there on Sunday, something that Gary Woodland probably kept looking up at the scoreboard and noticing, kind of like the Tiger effect when you see his name on the leaderboard on a Sunday. You're definitely sweating a little bit. So Brooks Koepka will be back. He'll be back in full swing. And right now you got to give the credit to Gary Woodland.
Now, Brooks, like a lot of these other new age players, like the Rorys and other players like that, are big, muscular guys, much like the guys that they're trying to emulate, or the guy they're trying to emulate, Tiger Woods. Now, Tiger didn't have an especially good showing. He made the cut this time, which is great, but he still finished, about 11, 12 shots off the pace. And this is coming off of the last couple of majors that he was in, the PGA Championship, and now this one. Was it a little premature for all of us to think that he was back and that he had a realistic chance to catch Jack at 18 majors?
I don't think it was premature. I think for Tiger Woods, winning the Masters was one of the biggest accomplishments he's ever had in his whole career, and that's saying something. The guy's, he's won 15 majors now. But I think for him, it's just about getting out more regularly. Obviously, after the Masters, he took some time off, went straight from the Masters to the PGA Championship, missed the cut. Bethpage Black is a really tough course. A lot of guys struggled, but Tiger missed the cut there. And then he played in one tournament in between the PGA and the U.S. Open. And then, as you mentioned, he finished about 11 or 12 shots off the pace, 21st in the tournament at Pebble Beach last weekend. So I think Tiger Woods is back, if you will. I think him winning the Masters was one of the best things for the sport of golf. You saw the galleries out there supporting him. You saw the fanship. A lot of these guys, as you mentioned, on tour now, Brooks Koepka, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, those guys all emulate this guy because they grew up watching this guy be so successful. And they said, I want to be like that. I want to win these big tournaments. I want to be the best ever. So it's great for golf, for him to be back, for a guy like Brooks Koepka to be dominating as of late. Rory McIlroy's back. He just won the Canadian Open up in Canada. So it's been a good run for golf over the past few months. And then with the one major left, the Open Championship, that's going to be interesting. Brooks Koepka's name will be in the mix. Tiger Woods will be a fan favorite. Rory McIlroy going back overseas to play in front of some of his family and friends. He's going to be a favorite as well. So I think the sport of golf is in a really great place right now.
I couldn't agree anymore. With all the different great players that are out there, it makes for a really interesting viewing each tournament that goes by.
Absolutely.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's Talking Sports. Make sure you tune back in next week as we'll be covering all the different relevant sports topics. For Connor Clement, I'm Matt Bisaccio, and we will see you next time.